and welcome to another episode of TalkSpace&Co by MomSpace&Co. So, of course, you know what time it is. Pull out the glasses before we get into this conversation because we gon' pop the cork.
all day.
All day. Let's go. Okay, hold on. Let me get the sound. Oh, that was good.
Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be fresh. What are we drinking? That's what I want to know. What are we drinking?
We've got a nice little blend.
A red blend tonight? I'll take it.
Red blend. We'll do red blend.
Red blend is my favorite.
All right. Hold your glasses up. Put them more close. Get ready for the pour.
See my glass right there.
All right. We good? Y'all good?
Yeah.
Yes. You got the right amount too this time. I love it.
The right amount.
No, the right amount. I've been getting text messages. They're like, "Oh, you can't handle your wine. You're getting a little tipsy on your little show, don't you?" And I'm like, "Excuse y'all.
First of all, it's the big show, not the little show."
Let's go ahead and pop this cork and talk about some things because it's been kind of interesting this week. It's been
ghetto. The world has been worlding, and it's ghetto out there.
Yeah, I have to say that. So we're going to go ahead and go into it. We're going to go into a story that came out of Texas yesterday. 4 people are injured as a result of a school shooting. The thing that's different about this school shooting is that the person who did the alleged assaults says he's the victim. Mm-hmm. He claims that the people that he shot robbed him, assaulted him, and bullied him on numerous occasions. Mm-hmm. And they tried it again yesterday. And that's when he decided to open fire.
Granted,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go.
I was just gonna say, because Lynn and I were literally just having this conversation. How mom, she came out and she didn't justify the incident, but she did apologize as a family, but let it be known that yes, he was being bullied. But that's like the crazy thing. Like, I don't know if these schools are taking bullying seriously. They say they do, but it's like, where were the administrators when these things were going on? And
I agree with it. And they've got to realize that this is a different generation. Like, we were growing up, we teach each other on the playground. You say this, you say that. But bullying now has a whole new...
It's scary.
Mode.
Take it to a whole different level.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's on social media. The parents are joining in. Like, I don't ever remember any of my parents like, let me go ahead and bully this kid online. Right. So it's a whole new different world. But yes, so the country's like split. Some people are saying that, yes, it was justified because he was the victim of so many different types of incidents and he sought help and help was not given to him. And then other people are like, no, this is another issue of somebody acting violently and it's unjustified.
That's tough because you feel for him, but I mean,
it's not the way. Like,
it's not. I don't believe that's no.
Lunch is a time where you get to put down the pen and you get to do whatever, when you're working, and you get to go out to eat. But now they're saying don't go out to eat because orders online have now taken up the priority of in-restaurant diners during lunchtime. So
I went to Starbucks the other day, and the amount of mobile orders that they put before my order, I was just like, this is out of control. I should have mobile ordered my order, and then I would have gotten it faster.
You could have ordered your food, your drink right then and there, and you still would have gotten it faster.
Exactly.
Well, according to Slate, online orders have increased by 133%.
That's crazy.
So they're saying in some cases, like, you're going to be waiting quite some time. Like, you're not going to move. This guy said he was in Cava, which is a restaurant. I know we have them. Do you guys have them back home now? Okay. So he was in Cava for like 40 minutes. 40 minutes is your lunch period. Mm-hmm. Mine didn't budge because they were too busy filling online orders. He was like, it wasn't like we were short of staff. He said it wasn't like they were short of staff or anything. He said it was just online orders.
Maybe they should have people that just do online orders and then a crew for like in store.
I mean, they have to prioritize how it goes. Because I know that Starbucks in California had tried that. It didn't go so well, especially once the pandemic hit. It did not go so well. That poor little one solo person they put on online orders was dying.
No, they got to do more than one person.
Well, last but not least, guys, have y'all heard about this red light, green light Squid Game thing?
Yeah, we touched on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's now #1 in 76 countries on Netflix.
And it's the most gruesome show.
I watched the first one. And I will tell you, I can tolerate some violence. Like, I'll watch something violent and not think anything of it. Like, it doesn't really bother me. I sat there and I watched that and I was like, this is not good. This is not okay. That little doll spun her little head around and shot everybody in the room. I was like, oh.
See, I haven't even watched it because
it's not my kind of thing.
Yeah.
I got 5 minutes into it and I was not interested.
Yeah.
Well, it was boring the first 5 minutes. I fell asleep. I didn't wake up until they actually kidnapped everybody and put them into the solitary confinement.
So what if I want to watch it now?
I was about to say, well, if
honestly, I told you nothing. That's the problem. I told you nothing.
No, my kids have watched it and my dad has watched it, and they say it's not my thing.
Yeah.
But what did they say? I saw something on Instagram and it was like the guy, the creator of it, had brought it somewhere before, and
so he was before people. It's been 10 years. He kept presenting it to people and people were like, this is not good. This is not great. We don't want to see it. 10 years. And then finally they said, okay, we'll go ahead and put it up. Not thinking it was going to be anything popular. And then it has now circled the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
Honestly, it makes The Purge look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah.
I like The Purge, but I'm not watching that.
Oh,
you like The Purge? Stop.
Oh, I can't do The Purge.
I can't do The Purge.
I like The Purge. I don't like Saw, and I saw that Saw has like a series coming out.
I love Saw. I feel like my hair is giving Saw.
Well, company, that's all we have for the Pop the Cork segment. Coming up, we have a special guest who's going to talk to us about her very own breast cancer journey. So stay tuned. See you later.
All right. So as we know that millions of women are diagnosed with breast cancer, and joining us here today for another episode of TalkSpace&Co, we do have the founder of For the Breast of Us, or co-founder, Maissa Thomas. So hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. So I guess let's just start by you telling us a little bit about how life was before you were diagnosed.
I feel like that's a loaded question. I feel like I've lived a million of lifetimes. But I guess, right before I was diagnosed, I was in the best shape of my life. I had just lost like about 40 pounds. Life was great. I was diagnosed in November of 2015. So even just that year of 2015, it was a really great year. What did I have going on then? Like, one of my cousins was getting married. I went on a couple of trips. I mean, I was literally just living my best life. But when I look back on it now, it kind of reminds me too, I think, like, just God and the universe was just getting me prepared. Like, you're gonna have a whole bunch of fun, because then towards the end of this year, stuff's gonna hit the fan and it's just gonna come at you full force. So, I'm a single mom. I have a son who currently is 19. At the time, he was 13. So it was just him and I, and just working. I work in the healthcare field, and yeah, we were just living life and going through the motions.
How did you find out that you had breast cancer, and what were your first thoughts when you got that diagnosis?
So I actually found my lump myself. Had just got out in the shower, was putting lotion on, and as I was lotioning up my breasts, I immediately felt a really large lump. Even just to back up 2 weeks before then, I had actually had my physical. And when my doctor did my breast exam, when she was pressing on my breast, she had felt something, and I had felt something at the same time when she had pressed down on it. And she pretty much dismissed it and just said, oh, it's probably nothing. You've been working out a lot. Maybe you've just strained something. And so I didn't think anything of it. I remember calling my sister when I had left the appointment and just said, hey, my doctor, when she was doing the breast exam, she felt something. And my sister was like, oh, it's nothing to worry about. You're probably close to your cycle. Your breasts kind of get a little lumpy during your cycle. And, because you're in that space and you don't want to have your mind just running and anxiety going, I just said, okay. But even then, I kind of was a little bit uneasy because I pretty much, I take pride in knowing myself, especially my breasts. I really love my breasts. And so I didn't have lumpy breasts. So for her to even feel something, it was just a little bit weird, but just kind of dismissed it. So 2 weeks later, when I was getting out the shower, at this point, the lump had doubled in size.
Wow.
And I knew immediately that something was wrong, but I still tried to talk myself off the ledge at that point. I was trying to tell myself like, oh, maybe it's just like a clogged milk duct, even though my son was 13, and just thinking that it was nothing. And it was a Saturday. I was actually getting ready to take my son to his football game. So I couldn't do anything at that point. It's not like I could call my doctor, and say, so I had to just wait over the weekend. And I remember calling my primary care office and telling them that I found a lump, and this was on a Monday, and they were like, well, we can't get you until Thursday. And I'm just like, no, I can't wait that long. So I actually called a doctor's office that I used to work with, that I had a really good relationship with. And I talked to the office manager who used to be my boss and told her what was going on. And they literally got me in the next day. And, one thing that I try to tell people is like, everybody has some sort of privilege, especially now because everybody's talking about like race relations, how things happen. And whenever you tell a white person that they have a privilege, then they automatically get on the defense because they're just like, to them, that means that they're racist, right? Well, that's not what you're trying to say. So like, I have a privilege because I work in the healthcare system. So I know that I can call people that I used to work with and tell them that I have something going on, and they can usually get me in within a day or two, which I know the normal person wouldn't be able to do that. So literally, I found my lump on a Saturday, had an exam on a Tuesday, got my mammogram and ultrasound on a Wednesday, had my biopsy that Friday, and then the following Monday, I was already diagnosed. Wow. And that's like, unheard of, right? And so what I try to tell people is that when you have a privilege, it's your job to elevate the other people around you and give them that same type of privilege that you have. And that's what people have to realize. That's what privilege means. We all have some sort of privilege, and it just means using that privilege for good and making sure that the people around you can have that same type of access that you have. Sorry, I kind of jumped onto a whole tangent about that, but
no, that's okay. Can I ask, so any family history, like anything that would have raised a red flag, or, now they're not doing mammograms, I think until like 42 maybe for routine?
45.
But like 45.
They actually just changed that. The American Cancer Society, that's like a big thing that's going on. They just recently changed that. That was their recommendation, yeah.
And I mean, I don't understand why I had this conversation with a friend, because we know that this can happen at any age. My mother-in-law, she was diagnosed in her 30s. So, yeah.
So I have an aunt on my mom's side, my mom's sister, who had breast cancer. But I remember when she was diagnosed, I was about 18 or 19. And so I believe that she was in her 60s. And so at that point, it was just like, oh, well, she's kind of getting it when they usually think that women who would get breast cancer would get it. And they didn't say that there was anything for me to worry about. On the flip side of that, on my dad's side of the family, I inherited a gene from him called Lynch Syndrome. And Lynch Syndrome means that you are predisposed to colon cancer. And for women, it's colon and also endometrial cancer. And so about 5 years before I was diagnosed, I actually had genetic testing because my dad had colon cancer, and then he found out that he had this genetic mutation. So I had genetic testing, and then I found out that I had the gene as well. So I remember when I was diagnosed telling all of my doctors, like, I'm pretty sure that this gene is the reason why I had breast cancer. I had no other risk factors per se. And I remember them all telling me, oh, there's not enough research. There's no way possible. I'm like, hello, you can research me. I'm right here. Because I was diagnosed at the age of 35. So if there's other women who have this genetic mutation, then you could be telling them that they should probably be getting mammograms between the ages of 30 and 35 as well. So then they know what their risk factors are and something that they could be looking at. And now, fast forward 5 to 6 years later, they are finding out that women that have Lynch syndrome, they could possibly get breast cancer. So there is a link there.
So I have a question. How did you explain to your son what was going on?
Well, the funny thing about that is I was actually forced to tell my son before I was ready to, because I had told a couple of friends of mine who had friends his age. And one of the young men, he had overheard his mom talking about my diagnosis. And so he went to school the next day and then told my son's best friend, like, how's Sayer doing? I heard that his mom has breast cancer. And so once I found that out, I was just like, okay, so I have to tell him now. And so I just sat him down and, I just said, me and my son, we have a really good relationship and we could just talk frankly about anything. Like I try not to sugarcoat because I feel like all my life, a lot of things were sugarcoated. And so I just sat him down and just said, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Sounds like we caught it pretty early. I'm going to get some of the best treatments, that we have here. I brought up examples of how like my aunt, how she was diagnosed and how she her birthday actually was yesterday. She turned 83. And so, how she's lived a long life. And, I just try to reassure him that I would be okay. And so, he still broke down. I remember him actually crying and just saying, because at the time his dad was actually in prison. And so for him, it's like when you hear cancer, like that automatically means death, right? So it's like, okay, well, now my mom's going to die and my dad's in jail. So like, what am I going to do? And just mostly just trying to reassure him and then just being honest. Like even now, like I just recently had surgery and he's away at college. And so, I texted him and told him that I was having surgery, but that I was okay. And just being completely honest with them and letting them know during the process, because kids are so resilient. That whole year that I went through treatment, he actually did one of his best years in school. He got all A's and just trying not to hide. There was a point in time where like, I didn't want him to see me being bald and I was having a hot flash. And so I just like ripped my scarf off my head and he came around the corner and we both kind of stopped. And I said, okay, is this too much for you? And he's just like, no, and so it's just more so, we grow up, especially within the Black community, of just like, you don't air your dirty laundry, you don't talk about anything and try to hide. And that was definitely me. Like, I didn't want him to see me being sick because to me, that me being sick equaled me being weak and not being able to take care of him. And that was something that I had to learn, where it's just like, I could still take care of him and still love him and be here for him, regardless of, me being sick at the time.
Oh, sorry. that hit home a little bit, because when I hear you talk about how you didn't, it's pretty much you just wanting to protect him. As I brought up my mother-in-law, she's still going through that. And I always say, why don't you just talking about my husband, why don't you just tell him? No, I'll tell him what he needs to know. And I'm like, he's 33 years old. But
right.
Just hearing you say it, like it makes sense as to that makes sense. I mean, I get it now.
Because it's almost like a betrayal of trust, right? Like if you don't tell your kids something, then it's just like, well, what else are you hiding from me? What are you not telling me? Like, then they're just not going to trust you during the process. And you know how your kids are. I feel like everybody's different. Some people are like, oh, don't tell your kids so much, or you should tell them this. But I think it has to do with like the type of relationship that you have with them. And then just knowing how much that they could take on, that type of thing. I actually have a funny story with me and my son. It's like when I was going through chemo, my dad, he would come up here every day. And my dad lives about 30 to 45 minutes from me, but he would come up here every day and take my son to school, and then pick him up to school from me while I was going through chemo because I just couldn't do anything. And my dad that night was like, oh, did you want me to spend the night? Like, are you going to be okay? And I'm just like, trying to be the strong Black woman. And I'm just like, oh, you can go home. I don't need anything. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, just violently sick and just completely thrown up. And my son had heard it. And so, he came in and he was helping me. up until that morning. And then he ended up like yelling at me and saying like, this is why you need to stop being so strong and let people help you, because grandpa was going to spend the night. And like, that was just like a light bulb for me. Like, okay, like I have to accept people's help. I can't always just be like, no, it's going to be okay. And even still, it's even still hard for me now. I recently had surgery and it's hard for me to even ask people like, yes, I need these things, or, no, can you, stop and get me something. And so him saying that for me, it was, it's funny now, but even in the moment, I was just like, damn.
You're right.
What was your treatment process like, as far as like from the moment you got diagnosed, like how soon were you in treatment?
So I opted to have a lumpectomy first. So that's just where they go in and just take the tumor out instead of removing my whole breast. So I was diagnosed November 16th. I had my lumpectomy December 16th. And then it's funny how I remember all these dates. Then January 28th, I started chemo. And so I can't remember how many rounds, but my cancer was really aggressive. When they removed the tumor, they had got clear margins, and it hadn't traveled to my lymph nodes, thank God. But at that point, they said I still needed to do chemo because the cancer I had was aggressive, and they just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't have a reoccurrence, hopefully. And so I did chemotherapy from the end of January all the way until the beginning of June, and then I did radiation after that. And then I've had 3 reconstruction surgeries since then. So yeah, it's about a good full 9 months of treatment is what most young women, especially if they're diagnosed with an aggressive type of breast cancer, is how long. I remember my sister telling me it's just like carrying a baby. Like, you've done this before. And I'm like, man, I would rather be pregnant with twins and have to be doing this by myself than having to do chemo. Like, I wouldn't wish chemo on my worst enemy.
Yeah. It's and please tell me, I guess it's hard on the body as far as like, weak or tired. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fatigue. The one thing that I could compare it to, it's like being ran over by a semi truck very slowly, like they're running over you and then running back over you. And yeah, like plenty of times I just be on my couch and can't move.
Yeah.
You kind of lose your sense of taste. It's almost being like in COVID right now where we're all like quarantined, like you have to be in your house a lot. 1, because you can't move because you're so tired, but 2, you just don't want to catch anything because your immune system, is knocking you down. My oncologist used to tell me, she's like, basically, I am slowly killing you just to save your life. And that's literally what chemo is.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, I think what a lot of people don't realize is you see the physical effects when it comes to like losing your hair. If you lose weight, which that's kind of a myth because a lot of women who get breast cancer treatment, they actually gain weight because of the medications they put you on because of your side effects. I mean, I gained a good 50 pounds once I was done with treatment. So all that weight that I had lost before, I gained it back.
Oh, wow.
But there's always the side effects that you don't see, which is like depression. I slipped into a really bad depression in the middle of my treatment. Whether you have like brittle bones, you get restless leg syndrome, like there's all kinds of different things. And, the goal is hopefully it all goes away once you're done with treatment. But some women, even once they're done with treatment, they're still stuck with that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So you mentioned just now having surgery. Is it okay to ask what for, or?
Yep. So I had a lumpectomy originally, and then a year after treatment, I went back in to have a reduction and a lift just to make my breast look symmetrical. And about 6 to 9 months after that, I developed what's called fatty necrotic tissue. So where they took the tumor out, all that tissue around there died. And so that pocket kept filling up with fluid. So they had to go back in, drain that fluid out. And then they put an implant on my right side. The tumor was on my left side, but they put a breast implant on the right side just so they can make them more symmetrical. And then more recently, the breast implants, it was feeling weird to me. And it felt like it was slipping out of the pocket. And when they looked at my images, they said that it hadn't looked like it slipped out of the pocket, but they could see what I was talking about, and it was probably going to rupture. So they said, let's just go on ahead and take it out. So they took it out, and then they did a fat transfer, which when I was originally diagnosed, if more doctors were doing that, then that's what I would have done instead of doing a breast implant. So that's what they did. I completely, like, after I had surgery, I could tell immediately the difference. It felt 100% better. Yeah.
That's dope. I'm glad you were in tune with like what your body was feeling and had the ability to like let them know so that they could see you right away. Cause
Yeah.
I feel like some people.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did you ever go back to the primary doctor and tell her like you dropped the ball here? Like
I didn't really say that. I did email her once after I was diagnosed and was just like, hey, when you did my breast exam, remember that lump that you felt like actually turned out being cancer.
Yeah.
And she just replied and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She was also getting ready to retire, and not to say that that's an excuse, but she was probably halfway checked out at that point too.
Yeah. That's
still
no excuse, but
right. Yeah.
yeah.
But that's the biggest thing. It's like, I just want, especially women, to know, young women, like, you should be going to get your physical every year at the very, like, that's baseline. Like, everybody should be doing that. And then you just need to be in tune with your body. It's like, you're the only one that is driving this vehicle. And so, I could tell you all day long that something doesn't feel right, but you're not walking in my body every day. And so you need to find you a doctor that you have a really good relationship with. So that way, when you tell them that something's off, that they'll help you make that happen to get that checked out. And if you don't have people like that in your life, or any doctors like that, then you need to like get rid of them. I'm all for firing doctors and find somebody that's going to do it for you.
Absolutely. So can you share with us how For the Breast of Us came about?
Yeah. So I am the co-founder of For the Breast of Us. It is the first inclusive online community for women of color who have been affected by breast cancer. It came about because myself and my co-founder Jasmine, her and I were, friends on Instagram, but we didn't really talk that much. We knew of each other. We both were going to the same conference, the Young Survival Coalition conference that they have once a year. And I knew that she was going, and so I just messaged her and said, hey, I'll be there too. Excuse me, we should meet up. And she was like, yeah. And so we met up one day and we were kind of talking and just, saying like, it's really hard to find other Black and brown women, especially online, when you're going through, breast cancer. Like, we know that they're out there. We know that we're being diagnosed, but how come we can't find them? Even if you were to search the hashtag breast cancer on Instagram right now, 9 times out of 10, it's like you're going to get all white women on there. You're not going to find Black and brown women. So, we were just like, okay, well, we can change that. Also, in the process of me being diagnosed, I had actually met a young woman named Christina who was Hispanic. She became one of my really good friends. Unfortunately, about 2 years after her and I had met, she had passed away from metastatic breast cancer. Her, cancer had returned, kind of ravaged her whole body, and she passed away. And before she had passed away, her and I were talking because we had noticed other Hispanic or Black women who were being diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and they were passing away too. And it's just like, so why are we not being diagnosed, or not diagnosed, but why aren't we being researched? Like, if you know that we're being diagnosed with really aggressive breast cancer, why are we not being researched here? Why is most of the research happening with white women? We know that there's reasons why, but it's like, if you got somebody like me to talk to you about how cool this research project was, and all you had to do was take a survey, you're probably going to take it. Versus if a white woman walked up to you and was like, hey, I have this survey, do you want to take it? You'd probably be like, what do you want to know? You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, so we can change this narrative and change the difference. And so that's how For the Breast of Us was born. It was first supposed to be a website for women to blog about and share their stories. So then that way other women can kind of connect with them and realize like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one that's going through this. And it has just, blossomed, and it's continued to grow. Even now we have like a private Facebook group, and there's close to 2,000 women in there. And, this is all 2,000 Black and brown women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, which is crazy that we even have that many amount. But then it also goes to show that we needed a space and a place for us. to be able to just have a safe place to talk amongst ourselves and be able to share resources and stories with each other.
The Naked Truth Project, can you share more about that?
Yeah, so we have the Naked Truth Project. So that was our breast cancer. We don't call it breast cancer awareness because we're just like, everybody's aware that breast cancer is out there. So we call it Breast Cancer Action Month. And so that was our campaign last year. And that just shared beautiful pictures of Black and brown women in their bodies that have been diagnosed with breast cancer and scars. We wanted to do a campaign to show we're out here and this is what it looks like. So that was our campaign last year. Our newest campaign that we have is called When You See Us. And that is just to help amplify the voices and the women of color who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, because it's like, we want you to actually see us, like we are here. You know, this is who we are. We come from all different walks of life, different, shapes, different sizes. We're all over the country. And, we're here and we're thriving, whether we are living with breast cancer still, just recently diagnosed, or, having our quote unquote life after cancer right now. We're still here and we want you to see us. And, we're demanding that you see us regardless.
So you had mentioned that while you were going through treatment, you went through depression, I believe. Do they offer any type of like counseling or therapy as part of your recovery or anything? Or
Girl, no, they don't. And that is one of the things that we're like, trying to champion for too. We definitely tell a lot of the women in our group, find yourself a therapist. Let's get rid of that stigmatism that you shouldn't be going to therapy, that you should just pray it away. Praying is great. I'm not going to turn anybody down and say that they shouldn't be praying. You should definitely pray to whatever God that you want to pray to, but you also need to be talking to a therapist, somebody that's unbiased and that you can just unload all that stuff off on. There's so much going through your head. And so we always say, you have a cancer care team, you have your oncologist, your radiation oncologist, you have a social worker. Like, into that system, there should be a mental health therapist in there as well, because there's so, like, you're thinking about so many things. And so you need to be able to have somebody, like, you can have your family members and everything. They're not necessarily going to know what you're going through. They can only relate so much. And you need to be able to have somebody, honestly, that you could talk to and just be like, today's a really crappy day. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I remember in my second or third really hard chemo strain, I walked to my doctor's office and just broke down to her. I was like, I don't think I could do this anymore. Like, this is too much for me. And just, completely broke down in her office. And she's just like, yes, I know, but I needed somebody to tell and be okay with saying that, and not just being like, okay, but you got to go sit in that chair. It's like, well, you go sit in that chair and be pumped up with all these drugs. So you do need to have that, because I know the one thing that I have noticed in just being in that for myself is that it's real easy to slip into depression, and it's real easy to just to be like, I don't want to do this and I don't want to be here.
So do you think, I know you mentioned and you said that you would check yourself, but is there anything in particular that you would tell other women to look for, or were you feeling anything else before you felt the lump?
I mean, the only thing that I could say that I was feeling is I was really fatigued. But you guys know, being a mom, like,
Every day.
right, you're tired all the time. And then one of my really close cousins, like, she was pregnant. And so, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'm just feeding off of that, whatever. But I mean, that's it. Like, otherwise, like, you may have some where you may have some discharge out of your nipple or whatever, but all those are like red flags. Otherwise, you don't really have anything beforehand. I mean, so I guess what I would say is definitely know your family history. I don't think that we as people of color know our family history, enough. You need to sit down with people and just be like, hey, like, who had this type of cancer? Where did it come from? Especially because what we're learning now too is that a lot of women, when they have these genes that makes them predisposed to breast cancer, those actually come from your father's side of the family, not your mom's side. I think everybody always thinks that those really come from and they really don't. They really come from your father's side. Just like this gene mutation that I have, like, that came from my dad. And a lot of women who have the BRCA gene, which is the well-known breast cancer gene, they usually get it from their dad's side of the family. They don't, I mean, taking to account Beyonce and her dad, right? You get it from your dad's side. You usually don't necessarily get it from your mom's side of the family. I was listening to Instagram Live recently of an oncologist that I know, and she was like, just have these frank conversations with like the older women in your family. She was like, because they'll just blow it to the wayside. She was like, sit down with them and be like, okay, so are you having any vaginal bleeding today? She's like, if they just look at you crazy, just be like, and if you are, yes, we need to go get that checked out, which is so true, because if you are post-menopause and you're having some vaginal bleeding, you're just thinking it's nothing, 9 times out of 10, that could be something worse that you don't know what's going on. And then, we just dismiss it. There's only some things that you should just, wait and see on. Like if you pop up and you got a sore throat, it's okay to wait a couple of days to see if it goes away. If you're having the discharge coming out of your nipple, that's, unless you are breastfeeding. And even then that could be a little touch and go there, because if you're breastfeeding and the discharge coming out of your nipple is a different color, like that's not a wait and let's see thing. That's a like, let me get my doctor on the line and figure out what's going on and tell them what's actually happening. But also like, it's definitely just being in tune with your body. Like from the surgery that I had, I was having some discharge come out of one of my incisions. And I remember, calling over to the nurse and just being like, I shouldn't be having a discharge like this. And, she's just like, oh, let's just, wait and see, like, blah, blah, blah. And then this past weekend, I started having more and, it had like a foul smell to it. And I'm just like, okay, no, to me, that means it's an infection. And I called the consulting nurse and she's just like, well, I don't think it's anything for you to worry about. You don't need to come to the ER because, COVID and everything is going on. And you probably don't even need to go to the urgent care. Like, let's just wait till Monday. And this is on Saturday. Let's just wait till Monday. We can talk to your doctor or whatever. And then she, at the end of her call, she was like, so what do you think you're going to do? I'm just like, that's why I'm calling you. You should be telling me what I should be doing. And then, I called my doctor on that Monday and they literally got me in. And she was like, I'm glad you came right now because you probably were starting to have an infection. And now we caught it soon enough versus if it got any worse, you probably would have to be in the hospital. So, it's things like that. Like you just have to really know your body and you have to know your family history.
Yeah, and advocate for yourself because they're so quick to turn you away and just,
Absolutely. Like why is that ever okay? Just listen to me.
Right. Yeah.
But thank you so much for sitting down and taking the time to have this conversation with us to make to share with our listeners more about your foundation as well as breast cancer and how we can be more in tune with our bodies and don't get pushed to the wayside. And
right.
So thank you for creating that space as well, because like you said, like it's not underrated, but it's what are we overlooked when it comes to that, especially. So thank you so much for all that you continue to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I would definitely say, to anybody that's listening or watching, definitely check out our campaign. It's really powerful. The pictures, they're really beautiful, really powerful. They're also empowering to other people just to see and just to get our images and voices out there. There's even quotes from what we have ambassadors, we call them baddie ambassadors, and it's their own real raw quotes of how they feel and why they want people to see them. Because even right now, when you're looking at Breast Cancer Awareness Month, you're probably not seeing a lot of Black and brown women on your screen or any of these campaigns, right? And so it's like, it's up to us to be able to elevate all of those stories and their voices and their images to make sure that, we get them out there, because again, we are the ones that are being diagnosed at a really young age. And, unfortunately, we're the ones that are passing away, which, by the time we are diagnosed, I think there's a study that recently came out that said the disparity has closed in terms of, Black and brown women being diagnosed to Caucasian women. But what they failed to name in that study, it's just like, but when we're being diagnosed later, meaning we're not being diagnosed until we're like stage 3 or stage 4. So yeah, maybe you're catching us all at the same time, but you're also catching ours when it's more advanced. And it's very hard to treat when, you're stage 3 or stage 4. You can have a long life expectancy, but, we want to start getting it. I mean, we really want to get it to where nobody's being diagnosed. But if you are still going to have women being diagnosed, let's have them be diagnosed at an earlier stage. So hopefully they don't progress into metastatic breast cancer.
Yeah. Well, okay. So where can we find more information? And you mentioned Instagram, and then.
Yep. So we're on Instagram and Facebook at For the Breast of Us. We are on Twitter as well at The Breast of Us. And then you can go take a look at our website. It's breastofus.com. There's over 100 stories from women written from their perspectives on their whole breast cancer experience, how they're living with breast cancer. It's not, the whole Debbie Downer thing too. Like, you have women there that are talking about beauty, and clean beauty in particular, or, recipes, things of that nature. One of our most popular blogs is called My Broken Vagina, which was written by this Hispanic woman named Miranda, who's one of our baddie ambassadors. And she's just talking about how nobody prepared her that she was going to lose her whole sex drive and be thrown into menopause at such of a young age, and how that, could have affected her marriage, but different things that her and her husband have done, and it's really cute. It's funny, of course. And, as a young woman, like, when you're diagnosed at 28, 30, 35, even 40, nobody tells you, especially the doctors don't tell you, that when you start cancer treatment, you're literally thrown into menopause. And so your body doesn't know how to take that, because you're not supposed to be going into menopause at 30. And so your body's trying to fight it, but this is what's being, and so then it's like, you lose your sex drive, and then you're just like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? And so she, talks about that openly. So there's a lot of good stories from that perspective. And then it's just good to hear from Black and brown women from their own perspective, and how they're living and how they're thriving despite of breast cancer being thrown their way. So definitely take a look.
Sounds like my kind of read or conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for having me. This was definitely a great conversation. And, any way that we can definitely partner together in the future, I would love to, because we have a lot of women who are moms in our community as well, and they're learning how to navigate being mothers and motherhood. They just either were diagnosed with breast cancer, or, they're still living with breast cancer. That's only just a part of their story. But if there's something that you guys have, any type of events or anything, I would love for us to partner together, especially coming up next year towards Mother's Day, and we get to honoring the moms in our community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This was great. It's almost like having a little girl chat.
Yes.
That's what we strive for, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.